This is the Norse Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hey everybody, it's Joey with the Norse Group, and welcome to the Norse Group Real Estate Radio Show and Podcast. We're going to do a special show today. At the beginning of our last presentation on June 3rd, we, Bruce decided to add a little bit last minute, and it was a great little piece. And I called it, kind of his love letter to our clientele or our investors that have followed us for all the years. It's just a powerful message, some inspiration. So I thought we should do it for everybody else. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and just introduce Mr. Bruce Norris, and we'll let you go from here. Now, it was kind of funny. I got a chuckle out of you when you saw the first slide for the presentation, and I don't think you expected it, but create an opening for yourself, by force if necessary. Yeah, there's that chuckle again. So good morning, Bruce.
Good morning, Joey. Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like. I think I guess I have to say I feel like most people had a path that they pursued and gradually ended up there. For me, getting involved in real estate happened basically in a day. I had no background in it. No one in my family had a background in it. No one in my family was independently working like a business or on just on commission. So that was interesting that I had a chance to do that. And the forced part is I have found that sometimes you're not being let in without struggle. And that was the case of welcome to the business. And then the owner of the business asked me the question. I guess I'll go from the beginning. I had a chance to go with somebody who thought I might be good at the buying business for whatever reason, had no real estate experience and no real estate license, but I went with him anyway because he knew I had a sales background. And we went to a lady's house that he was going to attempt to buy. We were in there for a very few minutes. He irritated her and we got kicked out. And when we got back to the car, sometimes when you just observe things, you see what went wrong and that could have been corrected. And so I said, I think the lady will sell you her house. I think you just upset her. How about I knock on the door, get us back in? And so that all happened and we bought that house. Well, driving home that night, I thought, you know what? I think I get this. I think I understand why this has potential. And so back then you could get your license very quick. I took a weekend course, got a license, and went applied for this buying position. And the owner, first question, how long have you had your license? My response was 1 day. And he just laughed. He said, yeah, this is no place for an inexperienced agent. And I guess my point is for 99% of the people, that's the end of the interview. I wanted in more than that. I could see this as a life-changing thing, which it has turned out to be, obviously. So I said, well, let me ask you a question. And I always say that when I don't have any idea what the question is, and the best stuff of my entire life has come after that statement. I said, isn't the bottom line around here whether you can buy properties for a profit or not? He said, yeah. I said, you'll know in 30 days I could do that better than anybody you have. So that was my first punch through the door, man. Let me in, give me a shot. And 30 days later, I was the best buyer. I had made 1 year of income in the first 30 days, did it again and again for the first 3 months. And then I decided I didn't like how he did business. But if I don't knock that door open, Joey, you and I aren't talking today. It's absolutely the truth.
Well, not only that, it's, we're not the Norse Group has changed the lives of so many people and impacted so many families, that it's had a far bigger reach. I mean, that door is huge,
when you put it that way, that is true, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's never been for you about like how much money can I make. It's always been like, hey, I'm doing something I'm good at, and maybe other people can do it too. And it's never been like I'm gonna keep all this knowledge or I'm gonna keep all these deals. There's always been an abundance mentality. And I think that's why so many people have followed us, because it's.
It's funny, Joey, what you just said. My best friend, Alex Navarro, I taught him the business pretty shortly after, and I bought a used car from him. I mean, this was so accidental. We're still great friends, and he lives in Florida now. But I just met him when he sold me a car, and I just liked him. I said, "Do you own a house?" No, it's not hard. Showed him what to do. Like next week, he bought the house he was renting, flipped it, made 25 grand. That was the end of his car business. But when I told him I was going to teach other people, you should have seen the look on his face. You're going to teach other people this? Why would you do that? I'm not worried about the competition, man. I just think it's a cool thing to know. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and create an opening for yourself. That's the very first thing that you had. But at the beginning, when you don't know a lot and you're just starting out, the second part of this is concentrate on a skill that you're good at, right? And that's what I think this means. You don't have the money, you don't have a big portfolio, but if you can find deals, that's a very valuable tool.
It can be a lifetime of that. Oddly enough, I mean, Joey, I don't really know how to fix houses. I mean, I understand the process, and there was a time that I did a lot of estimating and things like that. But I would say that this is an honest statement. I'd say the last 700 or 800 houses we bought, I never even saw, because I owned a business that was self-sufficient. But the one thing that I could find, I could locate deals. And that was the key skill, because everything else is an hourly wage, to be honest with you. So if I'm going to hire a contractor or realtor or whatever, there's a fee attached to it. The real skill was saying somebody that owns $1 million house, yes, to a 650 number, and it makes all that other possible. So it's hard for people to imagine, well, how could I get somebody, let's say I could get somebody to say yes to 650, how would I fund it? That's the easiest part. Easiest part. You stand in front of an audience at a real estate club and say, I don't know what to do with this $1 million deal. I got it tied up for 650. You will not get out of that building alive without somebody, maybe 10 people going here, because you've just proved that you can do the impossible, find something wholesale. There's lots of people that make an effort and never do it. The fact that you've done it is awesome, because that person knows, okay, you're going to find number 2, 3, 4. So you're not having money problems after that.
Yeah. And that leads to our third, point is, understanding that wholesale offers are accepted every single day.
Well, and sometimes it makes perfect sense, because let's say the property, vacant. Okay. Right now, insurance is a big deal. Well, insurance companies, if you've got a vacant house for 30 days, it's no longer insured. I'm sure the owner of that property doesn't know that. What if you inherit the property? Well, what's your cost basis? It's zero. So everything that you get above that, and by the way, maybe it's from a distance, you don't know how to fix it. All of those things come into play, and you could just get a check and call it a day. Sometimes owners are frustrated because their relatives are living there for free. That happened a fair amount of times. I've had people having businesses that they could have a chance to buy. And that was that 73K boot camp purchase. That was kind of fun, because that was done live in front of a group of people that had paid to see the business operate in real time. And we were running an ad that we bought houses, and the guy called in, and the conversation was ballpark. He had a 150 grand house. He wanted to sell it for 120. And he said, I just need to put carpet in and it's all good to go. So try as he might, whoever was in the boot camp couldn't get him off that number. And so he hung up, and then I decided I would call back and put it live, on speakerphone, and talk to the owner again. I said, I'm the guy's partner, and I'm just curious, why don't you toss the carpet in and list it? He said, I don't have time. Well, see, that was what the first conversation didn't do, is get to the bottom of what was the motivation. Well, time. I said, well, in the interest of saving time, you shouldn't be calling real estate investors trying to sell a 150 house for a 120, because the answer will be no 100% of the time. He said, well, what about 100? I said, no. And then I said, why don't you just list it with an agent? I told you, I don't have time. What's the time issue? I have a chance to buy a $500,000 business for 73 grand. I said, so if I walk over with 73 grand today, you good? There was a pause. He said, yep.
Oh man. Well, that's
when I hung up that phone, Joey, the whole room exploded in applause. It was cool. Because all of a sudden, a guy that was stubborn at 120 went to 73 because I was able to point out that's why you made the call. You're not losing money. You're not losing 120 to 73. You're gaining 73 to 500.
and that's kind of the mentality people have right now, right? They think, oh, I can still get 850 for that house. Well, I don't want to take 800. I could have got 850 a month ago, but you should have never been at 850. Your house is really worth about 700. So 800 is still a great offer.
Yeah, it's a good thing when you're selling. Not that prices have really taken a big hit, but what has happened is your euphoric number was in the clouds. So we started building houses at what we thought was a 650 retail. We probably hit $1 million at some point, and right before we had it for sale. And we were very unlucky that we had to take an offer of 975.
Yeah, boo hoo.
So you could concentrate on the 25 grand that you didn't get, or you could go, wow, I'm a happy camper.
Well, so as you're building your career, and now you're starting to build this skill set, things start happening in your career. And I always love this story that you've told at the clubs, and I'm sure people that are listening today have heard it before, but I think it's impactful to always remember that you're sitting across a person, and that's something that's always stuck with me that you've said, and that's our fourth point is take pride in in how you do the business, not that you're doing the business.
Yeah, that was why I left that company. It only took me 90 days to go, man, it's not a match. Yeah, I can make money here, but I hate how you treat people. I hate it. And I'm forced to treat them like that because, like we're writing offers, they're going to net 20 grand. And then the closing happens, they get 16.3. And I mean, they're upset. Well, I don't want to do the deal. Well, the deal was already closed, man. There's nothing I can do about it. Every closing, I just said, yeah, forget about it. And so fortunately for me, this happened early. Within 3 months, I got a call from a home owner in Garden Grove. I went to see him, made the wholesale offer, very unemotional, monotone. That's fine. And I need this long of an escrow. That's fine. And I need you to do some work on it. That's fine. And I never had that before. You're used to pushback or some kind of, and it was nothing. And the hair on my neck went up. I mean, I just thought, wow, this is really weird. I said, you know what? I don't want to talk to you about your house anymore. Are you okay? And he kind of looked surprised that I asked the question. And he said, no, I'm not. I said, okay. And I had just bought 10 books called The Greatest Miracle in the World, written by Og Mandino. And I said, give me a minute. I ran outside and I gave him one. By the way, this is the book. I bought a signed first edition to give to the guy that owns Valuetainment that I'm going to mail today, by the way.
Okay.
Anyway, so I said, don't want to talk to you about your house anymore. Want you to read this book. If you won't read the book, read this chapter, and I'll see you in the morning. So the next morning, I went to go see him. He opened his door. He said, I want you to know the book you gave me saved my life. I was going to sell you my house and kill myself. And man, that sentence has stuck with me with every meeting I've ever had ever since. And, he also said, and this was very key, he said, I'm still going to sell you my house. What I realized is what I need most is a new start. And all of a sudden I was in the new start business, Joey. I can't tell you how impactful that was. That means you look forward to the next meeting. It means you look forward to looking across the table going, okay, what's really up? Can I be, I don't know what would be the word. Can I come across honest enough to where he'll actually tell me what's up? I love when a seller used to tell me, I don't know why I'm about to tell you this. I haven't told anybody else this. That's when I know I got trusted.
Yeah.
And I get trusted because I'm trustworthy. That's the coolest part. That means you like the business, Joey. There was nothing more discouraging than having to try and put on the, the attitude that the owner when I worked for that company in 1980, I couldn't do how he treated people. I think I may have told the story at the live seminar, but this is how his company was thought of. I went one day, I didn't have anybody call, so I decided I'd go desk to desk to some realtors. And honestly, one of the first desks, I said, "Hi, I'm Bruce from Sierra Realty." The guy leaps from his chair and goes to choke me with both hands.
This is before or after your karate?
Well, I always was into boxing. So that was no problem to avoid that. So I kind of parried it, and I looked at him. I said, "Oh, I see you've heard of this." Well, that took him back a bit, and he says, "Yeah, I've heard of you. I hate you guys." I said, "Man, that sounds like a story." And so, what's up with this? And so he told me the story. And honestly, we bought a house from him. That was cool. I said, "You know what? When you deal with me, none of that's ever going to happen."
Two things come up for me when you tell this story is, when I used to do insurance sales, and you would set appointments, you'd get the business owner or whoever it was that was going to set the appointment. And if they didn't have any objections, you could rest assured that you're going to show up to that appointment and they weren't going to be there. It's
wow.
It's like, I need an objection because then he's actually thinking about meeting with me. If he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll be here, sure, whatever," you might catch him on accident because, "Oh, I forgot that guy was coming."
Exactly.
But otherwise they weren't.
That's funny.
And I think this is early on. It probably made you think about what this next slide is about. Is think about what kind of business you want to run. What kind of business model do you want to have?
Yeah, I think most people, they just get in the buying mode, which I understand because I was there. And the idea of speaking in front of a club was even not part of what I thought my repertoire would ever be. And then Jack Fullerton, I went to the meeting at Jack Fullerton's club, not to go to a real estate meeting, only to listen to a guy that was a mobile home expert, because I had bought 5 or 6 mobile home lots in a trade and I had no idea what to do with them. So that's why I went. And then he happened to say live in front of the audience that anybody who says they can buy properties in California cheap enough to resell them immediately is lying. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. That's what I do.
You big liar, Bruce.
And so, yeah, I thought I was going to be, I thought Jack Fullerton would like the fact that I waited till the very end of the meeting to tell him, "Mr. Fullerton, that's exactly what I do." And he just looked at me like, "Yeah, you bet, pal. Have a good night." And it irritated me. So I took pictures of the houses, a bunch of houses I had done, send it to him in a book, not for any other reason other than to say, it's true. I didn't lie to you. And then he calls me back and says, "Hey, I want you to speak to my club." I was like, the farthest thing from my mind was speaking to his club. But he said, "No, what you do is so unusual. You need to teach this." And so, all right. And I just had a lot of fun that night. And it turned out in the audience was someone that worked for Creative Real Estate Magazine, and he talked to A.D. Kessler. A.D. Kessler calls me up and said, "I hear, man, you know what you're doing. You want to write for our magazine." I mean, it was crazy. So that's the thing. The journey can change very quickly. I went from one accidental speaking engagement to writing for a national magazine to being on this guy's TV show and creating a seminar and then a boot camp and all of that. So all those things are interesting. The line about the commercial building, I'm going to point that out because that's happened to me a couple of times. A great friend of mine, John Stevenson, was instrumental in me wanting to buy a custom home lot. He inspired me because he had built a custom home, and we were, competitors, friends, but competitors. And when he told me that he had built a custom home, and then my wife mentioned the home that she had just had a Bible study at was really cool. and my male ego kicked in. I said, well, it's not as nice as our home, because we had a 5-bedroom home where the college teachers lived. She said, well, Bruce, it's a custom home. Oh, well, on my goal list that night was, I am walking through my custom home. And by noon the next day, I bought the custom home lot. Now, I had never looked for a custom home lot, but I found it in 4 hours. Well, the same thing was true with this commercial building. I always worked from home. I didn't have a company at this time. Alexis McGee was promoting my seminars, and she kept on bugging me. You need to have a commercial building so we can do a boot camp. Well, finally, at the end of this, I taught in San Diego on it was Sunday night when I left, so I drove home. When I got home, it was like 11 at night. So I couldn't make the call, but I had found an ad. So I opened up the newspaper, and there was a commercial building for sale. I think the ad said something. It was $450. Now it's $300 or something, way more than I paid for it. But that's the phone call I made. I met the owner, and I'm still in the wholesale buying business in my head. Now, his offer was that he was going to carry whatever the purchase price was at some ridiculous interest rates, 2 or 3%. And I said, why are you selling the building? He says, I have a partner. We hate each other. We cannot stand each other. I said, so for the next 20 years, you're going to get payments and split it, have to contact each other. Why don't you just take $5,000 a piece and call it a day? And he said, you know what? That sounds like a very good idea. So I bought the building, probably, I forget the number exactly, but it was like 10 grand plus what they owed. And I think what they owed was 70 something. And when I wanted to assume the loan because I wanted a credit line with that commercial bank. When I filled out the paperwork, the guy was startled. He said, is the building still there? I said, why do you ask that? He said, the guy just bought the lot for 90 grand 3 years ago and built a building brand new. I had bought the commercial building for less than the lot cost. And I had looked for it for one night and locked it up before noon the next day. So that's the importance, I think, of thinking, what else could I do? Because as soon as you dream it up and start looking for it, it shows up.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories of you showing up to Jack Fullerton's club is talking about the cars that you guys drove at the time.
Yeah, well, I knew that now I didn't know Jack Fullerton at the time, but honestly, he didn't spend money on anything frivolous. So yeah, in the parking lot when I left, there were 2 cars, a brand new 420 SEL, that was mine, and like a Ford Pinto that was falling apart, that was his. And he was already richer than Midas, and he looked at my car and went, what a joke.
Well, do you know what the number one car among millionaires is?
Ford Pinto?
No, it's a Ford F-150.
Oh, okay, a truck.
Yeah,
well,
it's a truck.
Well, and I understand, it took me a journey. This is a little embarrassing, but the 420 SEL was definitely for other people to see. I think it's the only time I ever owned a car where I was happy that you got to see me in it. Isn't that stupid? But I'll tell you one step further. I bought my first cell phone. It wasn't even hooked up, Joey, but I was driving with it at my ear so people could see, wow, this guy has a brand new Mercedes and a cell phone.
Man, you're like a stockbroker or something.
Yeah, I learned after that I didn't want to do that anymore. So that was pretty funny though.
Well, it's funny how, what small things could lead to the next and the next and the next and the next. And that's kind of what the journey of the Norse Group has been all these years.
Absolutely. Once the boot camp needed a location, I had a location I was going to use for 3 days, a month. Okay, what do I do with it? Well, hey, I was borrowing money from Craig Hill at a Vanguard funding, and I asked Craig if he would come over and work with the Norse Group instead, and the answer was yes. Well,
and that's a perfect segue, to your next point is, pay attention to the character of people, and that's, I won't steal your thunder, but, that's always been the most important thing about the Norse Group is doing the right thing. Yeah. I mean, that's, I never owned a company. But I always was observant of how people did business. And Craig
we had an incident where I was his biggest customer. An appraisal came in that was so ridiculously wrong. It was like $100,000 house, and the appraisal came in at 65 because I had bought it for 40 or something like that. So the appraiser couldn't justify how it could possibly be worth 100 if I'm buying it at 40. He hadn't taken my seminar yet, but so when the appraisal came back, it was so low. I said, Craig, can we just ignore that appraisal and do the loan I thought was going to happen? And a whole new Craig showed up, said, Bruce, not for you or anyone will I push the value of an appraisal. And when I hung up, I made a conscious thought way before I ever had desire to own a company. I thought if I ever own a company, that will be the first person I hire. And you know what's really great about that? You know how much time I have spent monitoring the, let's say the honesty or how we do the loan business? Zero. I haven't done any of that because I already know that Craig is going to make honest decisions. There's times I probably would have disagreed with some, but there's that instinct that kicks in. So there was an example where there was a loan that looked like pretty reasonable on paper, right? And yet Craig was really hesitant. He said, there's just something that bothers me about the conversations that I had with the guy. And, I just said, hey, let's go with your instinct. It's been right. Sure enough, that turned out to be a fraudulent deal and blew up for the guy that ultimately lent the money to the borrower. It was a fiasco. And you know what? That's why you deal with honest people. Honest people can make mistakes. But sure. You avoid a whole segment of mistakes called intentional.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
One of the things about our loan company is we don't loan to own. That's kind of a thing that's out there, like, oh, well, that's okay. You could take a risky deal because if it doesn't work out, then now you have a property and you can wholesale it. That's never been our intention, here at the Norse Group.
No. Well, and that's interesting. You bring up definitely a sore subject in a sense, because, one of the things that when you're in the loan business, like we have been, the most important person is the money source that has to have that on automatic pilot. So we need to call money source and say, okay, we have a house that's worth this. We need this much money. What we don't need every time is for them to drive out and take a look at it, and they're gone on vacation, so I can't go there for 2 weeks. They have to learn to make a decision based on the integrity of the company, or it wouldn't work, So when you're in the loan business, it sounds like, you really want to make those hard money loans. It's funny, if you ever hear Craig Hill talk on the phone, in about 5 minutes, you go, he sounds like an FBI interrogator.
It's funny you say that because, I think sometimes I take a call and I ask the questions and I hand it off and I'm like, here's the deal, Craig. And then he's like, okay. And he just starts asking me questions and I'm like, oh, what? I didn't think about that. He's like, yeah, I'm trying to get to one thing too, is this a deal or is this a situation?
Yeah, no, see, and a lot of times that's the thing. What Craig knows is, okay, why are we getting the privilege of getting this phone call? Since you've been in the business for 10 years, you're making a phone call here for the first time. Did your other lender pass on this deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got mold. Oh, thank you for telling us that. That type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he really does protect the lenders like they're his children almost.
Oh, well, how's this for the ultimate compliment? A man that he's dealt with is dying. His last words to his wife, just give Craig Hill the money. Wow.
Yeah, that says it all right there.
It does.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Norse Group Real Estate Radio Show and Podcast. Please be sure to join us next week for part 2 of our very special interview with Bruce Norris. See you then.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norse Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.
The Norse Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS License 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorsegroup.com and click the Hard Money tab.